In this video we're going to tie a little fly called the EP Turneffe Crab. First thing we're going to do is start off with the Gamakatsu SL45 Bonefish hook in a size 6. You can also tie this in an 8 or a 4. You want to keep it pretty small. This is designed for bonefish and permit in really skinny water. It's also really good for picky triggerfish as well. So the first thing we're going to tie in is going to be a pair of medium silver bead chain eyes. We're just going to tie those in right up near the front of the hook. And we're just going to take our thread all the way back down here to the bend. I'm actually going to take my thread just a hair a ways down the bend there. Then we're going to take a pair of large black mono eyes and trim them away from the plastic here. And I always like to burn the ends there. You can see there's a little nub on the mono eye. I just kind of take a lighter and just melt that little nub, giving me a nice round set of eyes there. Not that it really matters, but just makes the fly, I think, look a little better. Then we're going to take those mono eyes and just tie them in here at the back of the hook. Just kind of doing your figure X or figure 8 wraps, making sure that they're in there nice and secure. And you can use a little bit of Zap-A-Gap to really make sure that they're not going anywhere. Now at this point, I like to invert the hook, because this is going to be the side that the fish are going to be seeing. So that's the side that I'm going to tie. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a 1/2 inch streamer brush in whatever color you want to tie this fly in. This is olive. The fly can also be tied in brown, sand, tan, whatever color you wish. So we're just going to take that and tie it in right there at the back and secure that little wire nub to the shank of the hook. And you can just let that hang off the back for now. Now this fly has kind of some little micro claws. It's a small crab pattern, so it's going to have small crab claws. So for those, we're actually going to make our own. We're going to take some EP Silky fiber in olive, and we're going to cut away a fairly generous little chunk. I use the whole strip here, but the chunk is, when you just kind of let it fluff up, it's probably about the diameter of a pencil, maybe a little less. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie a knot in this. So I just throw a loop in that material, and then I take a pair of just little pliers, stick my pliers through the loop, and then grab the entire chunk all at once. I'm trying to watch the camera here and do this at the same time. And then pull that all the way through and make a nice tight knot there on the end. Then we're going to do that on the other side, the other end I should say, of the silky fibers. Same thing, throw a loop, and then grab all the material. That knot is basically going to be the crab claw joint. So then all you have to do is just trim about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch up the knot, just like that, and you have a semi-finished crab claw. Now you can really do whatever you want at this point. You can leave it like that. I fished them just like that and they're fine. Or you can taper and kind of feather them and trim out some of the material in the middle to give you kind of a claw, like 2 pairs of pinchers. Kind of like that. And then you can trim the ends so they're not so blunt. But that's really kind of up to you if you really want to do the extra work. It probably doesn't make all that much of a difference. just once it gets wet. There you go, and you have a little crab claw there. So you can do the same on the other side. And we'll super glue these at the end, and that'll kind of help the claw maintain its shape. If you really get a claw the way you want it and it looks really good, you can probably super glue it beforehand. Just make sure you let it dry before you tie it onto the fly. And the way I feather these tips is I just take my scissors and I just go in long ways and just kind of trim the tips, and that'll just kind of feather them until you end up with a little claw like that. Now we're going to take this claw, we're going to tie it in so that the joint just reaches past the eyeball of our mono eye. So I'm just going to take it, tie it in there. I'm going to tie them in front of my mono eyes. And I just do one claw at a time. And I like to tie them in kind of with a loose wrap or two at first, and then I just can kind of take the claw and just slide it down to the length that I want. Then I can lash it down and secure it. Then I'll tie up just a little ways up the body here, just to kind of keep the body the same diameter. You kind of want to keep everything nice and smooth. And then I'll throw a few wraps, kind of X wraps through these claws, and that'll help split them up, get some separation, and it'll also just kind of further secure them. Then once you do that, you can take your thread all the way up here to the bead chain eyes. And we're ready to wrap our streamer brush. So I'm just going to take that streamer brush and I'm going to wrap a few wraps in front of the mono eyes, trying to trap as few fibers as you can. And I'm going to take it and jump in between the mono eyes and the claws. Making sure I cover up all that thread. And I think I forgot to say what thread we're using. We're using Veevus 6/0 in a fluorescent orange. You can use anything that's kind of 140 denier or above. And once you make a few wraps behind those claws, then we can come in front of the claws. You want to make nice tight wraps. This is going to be the main portion of the body, so we want it to be as dense as we can get it here. So I just kind of push some of the fibers forward. Since this brush is so short, it can be kind of tough to make sure you get all the fibers in front of, or behind I should say, each wrap. So just do the best you can. You can kind of push the fibers back with your fingers as you wrap. That'll really help. And once you get up to the eyes, we're just going to secure that brush right underneath the eyes. Then you can come in here with a pair of little wire trimmers and trim those out of there. And you're always going to get a few trapped fibers. Not the end of the world, just trim them out as best you can. and then lay down just a few wraps to really secure and clean everything up. Now at this point we're just going to whip finish real quick. It doesn't need to be much because we're going to tie back in. But before I do that, I need a trim. So I'm just going to take my brush and just brush out as many of the fibers as I can. There we go. Now you're ready to trim. So I'm just going to take my fingers and just kind of separate the fibers on each side. And I'm going to take my scissors and just go right down the underside of the crab, kind of cutting a flat little base at the underside of it. And this is going to be what the fish sees. His fly will right hook up. Just take your time, make sure you're cutting only the fibers you want to cut. Don't cut your crab claws. And then we can trim the top side. Same thing, just kind of pull all the fibers to the side. This is going to be what allows the crab to sit perfectly flat on the bottom. So you want a nice flat surface for the crab to sit on. Now you can take the crab out of the vise if it's easier. We need to trim some of the fluff here at the back. You want to leave a little bit of that fluff, but you don't want it to hide the eyes. So I just kind of do a couple cuts just kind of right along the eyes. So I'll just take my scissors and just do a cut right up to the black mono eyes. And then you can leave a few of the long ends just hanging off the back there. Then we're going to do that same kind of long cut on each side. Now you don't want to cut too much because you can see those fibers aren't very long. So we're just going to take our scissor and we're going to cut from the crab claw. It's kind of hard for me to do this on the camera, but from the crab claw all the way to the eye. And all that does is it just kind of trims up and cleans up those sides. So I'm not necessarily really trimming much material, I'm just kind of cleaning up and giving the crab a nice clean side there. That's all I'm doing. And then, once you get it all trimmed up, we're going to put it back in the vise here. And now we're going to tie back in again, and we're going to tie in our Weedguard. For that I'm just going to use some 16 or 20 pound mono. I'm just going to trim a little from the spool here. And we're just going to take a piece of mono and just fold it over. Just like that, and lay it on the eyes with the loop facing down and leave a little room there. Then we're just going to take our thread wraps here. We're going to wrap several times around that loop, and then I can pull the whole thing up nice and tight and forward. And I'm going to wrap a few wraps behind that mono loop. And you can really manhandle the mono loop. So I just kind of force it forward and lay down several wraps right behind it. Then you can trim right up to the hook point. And then you can whip finish either behind or in front. I like to whip finish behind just because there's not a lot of room up front. And you essentially have a finished Turneffe crab. You'll want to super glue this. So we'll take our Zap-A-Gap. If you missed any fibers, this will be the time to trim them out of there. Take some super glue, and we're going to super glue all around the eyes, and also I'm going to glue the crab claws. It doesn't take much, it'll soak right in there. And that is a finished turnip crab. Great little fly for really picky permit or for really picky triggerfish as well. So if you're going to Christmas Island or on the flats of Hawaii, then this is a great little fly for both of those. As a finished olive turnip crab.